A single mom had to cancel her daughter's birthday cake. The Mafia boss who overheard didn't just pay for it, he risked everything to protect them. Because years ago, he'd saved her husband's life, and guilt was a debt that never died. Dante Moretti had killed 3 men before his 25th birthday. By 42, he'd stopped counting. But on a Tuesday afternoon in late September, standing in a small bakery on Porter Street, he watched a woman's hands tremble as she reached for her wallet, and something inside him cracked open. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Rivera," the baker, an older man with flour in his mustache, pushed the order form back across the counter. "I need the deposit today or I have to cancel. I've got bills too." The woman nodded. She was thin, worn at the edges like an old photograph. Her coat had been mended at the elbow. Next to her stood a little girl with dark braids tied in mismatched ribbons, one pink, one yellow, staring up at the display case like it held every dream she'd ever had. Dante had come in for espresso. His associate Marcus was handling a situation 3 blocks away, and Dante had 15 minutes to kill. He'd been checking his phone, half listening, when he heard the girl speak. "Mama, it's okay." Her voice was so small. "I don't really like cake anyway." The lie was so obvious, so brave, so heartbreaking that Dante looked up. The mother's face did something complicated. A collapse and a recovery in the same breath. "Lily, baby." "No, really," the girl smiled, and it was too big, too bright, the kind of smile children wear when they're trying to protect their parents from pain. "Emma doesn't like cake either. We can just have sandwiches at my party." "That's better." Rosa Rivera closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were dry, but Dante saw what it cost her. Okay, baby," she turned to the baker. "I'm sorry for wasting your time." "You didn't waste nothing, Mrs. Rivera. I'm just sorry I can't help." Lily took her mother's hand, and they walked toward the door. The girl looked back once at the display case, at the castle cakes and the princess cakes and the ones with sugar flowers that sparkled under the lights. Then they were gone. Dante stared at the door for 3 full seconds. The bell was still chiming. The baker sighed and started cleaning the counter. "That kid turns 8 this Saturday. Been planning that party for months." "But Rosa, that's the mom. She works 2 jobs and it's still not enough. World's not fair sometimes." Dante said nothing. He was thinking about the girl's face. About the way she'd lied to make her mother feel better. About innocence and sacrifice and all the things he'd lost so long ago, he couldn't remember what they felt like. He walked to the counter. "That order she canceled. Make it." The baker looked up, confused. "Sir." "The cake. The party. Whatever she wanted. Make it exactly how she ordered it." Dante pulled a money clip from his jacket. "Then double it. Add decorations, gifts, whatever 8-year-old girls like. Have it delivered Saturday morning." The baker's eyes widened. "Mr. Moretti, that's very generous, but I don't have her address." "You have her phone number for the order." Dante counted out bills. $1,000. He laid them on the counter. "Find the address. Deliver it. And don't tell her who paid." "Sir, this is too much. Keep the change. Buy your wife something nice." Dante turned toward the door, then stopped. "One more thing. I want you to forget I was here." The baker nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. Of course." Outside, Marcus was leaning against the black Escalade, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when Dante emerged. "Everything good, boss?" "Fine. You get your coffee." Dante realized he'd completely forgotten. "No. Let's go." As they pulled away from the curb, Dante looked back at the bakery. Through the window, he could see the baker picking up the phone. The money still spread on the counter like a hand of cards. Marcus glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "You okay?" "Yeah." But he wasn't. Something had shifted. Some door he'd welded shut 20 years ago had opened just a crack, and light was bleeding through. That night in his study, Dante couldn't focus. He just concluded a deal that would net his organization $2 million. He should have been satisfied. Instead, he kept seeing that little girl's face. That forced smile. That lie told in love. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a file folder. Old, worn at the corners. A name typed on the label. Rivera Mateo. Inside were surveillance photos, police reports, incident summaries, and one photograph that made his chest tight every time he looked at it. A young cop in a wedding suit, arm around a woman in a simple white dress. Both of them glowing with the kind of happiness that came from not knowing what the world would do to them. Dante had been at the warehouse the night Mateo Rivera's cover was blown. Had watched the young cop back into a corner, watched fear bloom in his eyes as 4 armed men closed in. And Dante had made a choice. He'd fired his gun into the ceiling, created chaos, left the back exit unguarded, let Mateo run. His father had beaten him for it later, asked him if he was going soft, if he'd forgotten what side he was on. Dante had taken the beating and said nothing, because some things you couldn't explain. Some instincts ran deeper than loyalty or logic. Mateo had lived 3 more years after that night. 3 years with his pregnant wife. 3 years to meet his daughter, to hold her, to teach her how to tie her shoes. Then a car accident on Route 9. A tired driver. A moment of inattention. Gone. Leaving Rosa alone with a child and bills she couldn't pay and birthday cakes she couldn't afford. Dante closed the file and walked to the window. His mansion sat on 5 acres of manicured grounds. Everything about it screamed money and power. The kind of place that was supposed to mean you'd won. But standing there, alone in his study at midnight, Dante felt like the poorest man alive. He thought about Lily Rivera and her mismatched ribbons. About the cake she'd pretended not to want. About the mother who'd tried so hard not to cry. And he thought, maybe paying for a birthday party didn't balance the scales. Maybe nothing ever would. But it was something. One small thing in a lifetime of taking. He pulled out his phone and texted his assistant. I want a car watching the Rivera apartment Saturday. Discreet. Just make sure nothing disrupts the party. The response came immediately. Yes, sir. Dante set the phone down and poured himself a drink. Whiskey neat. It burned going down, but it didn't warm him. Nothing had warmed him in a very long time. Outside his window, the city glittered like a promise it would never keep. Somewhere out there, in a small apartment with mismatched furniture and bills piled on the kitchen table, a little girl was probably already asleep, maybe dreaming of cakes she couldn't have, parties that would never happen. Not anymore. Dante raised his glass to the dark window. Happy birthday, Lily, he said to the empty room. Then he drank and waited for Saturday to come. Saturday morning arrived with rain tapping against the windows. Rosa stood in her small kitchen, staring at the coffee maker as it sputtered to life. Lily was still asleep or pretending to be. Rosa knew her daughter well enough to recognize the pattern. On days when disappointment waited, Lily stayed in bed longer, as if she could delay reality by keeping her eyes closed. Rosa had barely slept. She'd spent the night calculating and recalculating, trying to find money that didn't exist. $27 in her checking account. $14 in her wallet. The rent was paid barely, but groceries would be tight this month. No birthday cake. No decorations. No party. She'd tell Lily they'd celebrate next week. Next month. When things got better. But things never got better. They just got different shades of hard. Her phone rang, startling her so badly she nearly dropped her coffee mug. Unknown number. Probably a bill collector. She almost didn't answer. Hello. Mrs. Rivera? This is Tony from Rosselli's Bakery. Rosa's stomach dropped. I already canceled the order. I explained. I know, ma'am. That's why I'm calling. The young man's voice was bright, excited even. Your order is ready for pickup. Everything's been paid for. The words didn't make sense. Rosa sat down slowly at the kitchen table. Paid for? By who? The person wanted to remain anonymous. They came in Tuesday afternoon, right after you left. Paid for everything in cash, the cake decorations, party supplies. And they upgraded the order. I've got balloons, gift bags, even some presents wrapped and ready. This has to be a mistake. Rosa's voice came out small, shaky. Nobody would. No mistake, Mrs. Rivera. I've got your order form right here with paid in full stamped across it. You can pick it up anytime between now and 2 o'clock. After she hung up, Rosa sat frozen at the kitchen table. The rain kept falling. The coffee kept cooling. Nothing made sense. Who would do this? Why? Mama. Rosa looked up. Lily stood in the doorway in her worn princess pajamas, a hand-me-down from Maria's daughter, faded from too many washings. Her dark hair was tangled from sleep, and her eyes were careful, guarded. Who was on the phone? Rosa opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Baby, get dressed. We need to go pick up your birthday cake. Lily's face transformed slowly, like sunrise breaking over mountains. Disbelief first, then hope, then joy so pure it made Rosa's chest ache. Really? Really, really? Really, really? The bakery was warm and smelled like vanilla and butter. Tony greeted them at the counter with a smile so wide it looked like it hurt. Mrs. Rivera. And this must be the birthday girl. He disappeared into the back and returned with a cake that made Lily gasp out loud. It was a castle. 3 tiers of pink and purple fondant, with edible towers and sugar windows that sparkled like real glass. Tiny fondant princesses stood on the balconies. Flower vines climbed the walls. On top, in delicate script, "Happy 8th birthday, Lily." "Oh my God," Rosa whispered. "That's not all." Tony gestured to the counter behind him, where bags and boxes were stacked. Balloons, streamers, plates, cups, napkins, all princess-themed. And these he pulled out 3 wrapped gifts. The person didn't say what was inside, but they asked me to include them. Rosa's hand shook as she reached for her wallet. "How much do I owe for?" "Nothing. I told you, ma'am. It's all paid for." The person even left a tip for delivery, said to make sure everything got to you safely. "But I don't understand. Who would?" Tony's smile faltered slightly. He glanced at Lily, then back to Rosa. "They didn't leave a name. Just said they wanted to make sure your daughter had a birthday to remember." Back home, Rosa and Lily transformed their small apartment into a palace. Lily insisted on blowing up every single balloon herself, her face red with effort and joy. Rosa strung streamers across the doorways, hung paper lanterns from the ceiling fan, spread a plastic princess tablecloth over their scratched kitchen table. The cake sat in the center like a crown jewel. At 1 o'clock, Lily's friends arrived. Emma from school, who lived 2 floors down. Sophia from church, brought by her grandmother. Maria's daughter Carmen, who was 10 but didn't seem to mind playing with the younger girls. They played games Rosa invented on the spot. Musical chairs with no music, just Rosa clapping rhythms. Pin the crown on the princess using a drawing Lily had made last week. A treasure hunt where Rosa hid candy in increasingly ridiculous places, until the girls were laughing so hard they couldn't breathe. When it was time for cake, Rosa dimmed the lights and carried it out, 8 candles flickering. Everyone sang, off-key and enthusiastic, and Lily's face in the candlelight was radiant. "Make a wish, baby," Rosa whispered. Lily closed her eyes tight. Her lips moved silently. Then she blew, and all 8 flames went out in one breath. The girls cheered. Rosa cut the cake. It was chocolate inside, Lily's favorite, and watched her daughter's world expand with each bite, each laugh, each moment of pure happiness. Later, after the guests had gone home and Lily was in bed, Rosa cleaned up the apartment. She packed away decorations carefully, folding streamers and deflating balloons to save for next year. In the kitchen, she opened the 3 wrapped gifts they hadn't gotten to during the party. The first was a book, a beautiful hardcover edition of fairy tales with gilt-edged pages. The second was an art set, colored pencils, markers, sketch pads, everything a creative child could want. The third made Rosa's breath catch, a silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like a castle, delicate, beautiful, real silver, not costume jewelry. Tucked inside the box was a small card, handwritten. Every princess deserves a castle. Every child deserves joy. A friend. Rosa sat on her couch in the quiet apartment and cried. Not sad tears. Not overwhelmed tears. Grateful tears. Confused tears. Tears for a world that could be cruel and kind in the same breath. Someone out there had seen them. Had seen Lily's disappointment, Rosa's exhaustion, their small struggling life, and had decided it mattered. Rosa didn't know who. Didn't know why. But as she looked at the castle necklace glinting in her palm, she made a promise. If she ever found out who'd done this, she would thank them. Properly. With everything she had. She just hoped they'd understand what their kindness had meant. That for one perfect day, her daughter had felt like royalty. And Rosa had felt like maybe, just maybe, they weren't completely alone in this world after all. The black Escalade sat parked across the street from Rosa's apartment building. Engine off, windows tinted dark enough that no one could see inside. Dante had been there for 2 hours, watching the third-floor window like it was the only light in a dark universe. He shouldn't be here. He knew that. This was the kind of mistake that got people killed in his world, attachment, sentiment, caring about anything beyond profit and power. But he couldn't stay away. Through the sheer curtains he could see shadows moving, small bodies jumping, the flicker of candles being lit. He'd watched the guests arrive, 3 little girls with gifts wrapped in newspaper comics and dollar store bags. Mothers who dressed their daughters in the nicest clothes they owned, even if those clothes were threadbare. This wasn't his world. These people lived in a universe completely separate from his. One where birthday parties meant something. Where homemade decorations were treasures. Where children laughed without understanding how fragile happiness really was. The candles went out. Dante could see the shadows gathering around the table. He imagined Lily's face in that moment, eyes closed, making a wish, believing with a child's whole heart that wishes could come true. Something warm moved through his chest. Something he hadn't felt in so long he'd forgotten the name for it. Peace. Just for a moment. Just watching that window. Just knowing he'd put that happiness there. Boss Marcus shifted in the driver's seat, his voice careful. We've been here a while. The Carbones are expecting you at the marina by 6-inch. Let them wait. Boss, with respect. This isn't like you. Dante didn't answer. He watched a little girl's shadow press against the window, looking down at the street. For one impossible second, he could swear she was looking directly at him. Then she turned away, called back into the warmth and light by voices he couldn't hear. Marcus cleared his throat. The guys are talking. About the bakery. About the money you dropped. About this, he gestured at the apartment building. They're wondering what's going on. Let them wonder. In our world, boss, wondering leads to assumptions. Assumptions lead to weakness. And weakness gets you killed. I know. Dante finally looked away from the window. How long have you worked for me, Marcus? 17 years. In those 17 years, have I ever made a decision that put the organization at risk? Marcus hesitated. No, sir. Then trust me now. But Marcus's concern wasn't unfounded, and Dante knew it. In their world, emotion was currency you couldn't afford to spend. Loyalty was bought with fear and respect, never with sentiment. The moment your enemies sensed you cared about someone, that became the knife they'd use to gut you. Dante had built his empire by being untouchable, unreachable. A ghost who made moves no one saw coming, who had no pressure points, no soft spots, no weaknesses. Until now. Until a little girl with mismatched ribbons had looked at a birthday cake she couldn't have, and something inside him had broken. A light flickered in the apartment. The party was winding down. Dante could see mothers collecting their daughters, see Rosa standing in the doorway saying goodbye, see Lily waving with both hands like she was trying to hold on to every last second of happiness. She looks like her father, Dante said quietly. Marcus went still. Boss. Mateo Rivera. The cop I let walk 5 years ago. That's his daughter up there. His widow. Understanding dawned on Marcus's face, followed quickly by alarm. Boss, if you're doing this out of guilt. I'm doing this because it's right. Right. Marcus's voice rose slightly. Boss, we don't deal in right and wrong. We deal in profit and loss. Power and weakness. You taught me that. I know what I taught you. Dante watched Rosa close her apartment door, watched the warm light behind the curtain settle into a softer glow. But maybe I was wrong. The words hung in the car like smoke. Marcus stared at him, and Dante could see the calculations happening behind his eyes. How to protect Dante from himself. How to contain this before it became a problem. How to manage a boss who was suddenly showing the most dangerous trait a man in his position could have. Humanity. The Calabrese family has been circling lately, Marcus said carefully. Vincent's been looking for an opening. If he finds out about this woman and her kid. He won't. But if he does, then I'll handle it. How? By carrying them to death. Marcus's frustration broke through his usual control. Boss, listen to yourself. You dropped $1,000 on a birthday party for a kid you don't know. You're sitting outside their apartment like some kind of guardian angel. You're talking about right and wrong like those words mean something to men like us. Maybe they should. Maybe they should get us killed. Dante turned to look at his second-in-command. Marcus had been with him through wars, through betrayals, through nights when the only certainty was violence. He was loyal, smart, and right now terrified for Dante in a way that was almost touching. I appreciate your concern, Dante said quietly. But this isn't up for discussion. Then what is it? What's the plan here? You keep watching them? Keep throwing money at their problems? What happens when they find out who you are? What happens when your enemies figure out you've got a soft spot? Dante looked back at the window. The light was dimmer now. Rosa was probably putting Lily to bed, tucking her in, whispering goodnight. Simple rituals. Normal life. Everything he'd never had and never would. I don't have a plan, he admitted. I just know that for the first time in 20 years, I did something that didn't involve fear or blood or taking from people who had nothing left to give. And it felt. He trailed off, searching for the word. Right. Marcus offered, his tone skeptical. Human. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. You're going to get yourself killed, boss. Probably. And you don't care. I didn't say that. Dante started the car. I'm just saying some things are worth the risk. As they pulled away from the curb, Dante looked back one last time. The window was dark now except for a small nightlight, probably Lily's room. A gentle glow in the darkness. Marcus navigated toward the marina, toward the meeting with the Carbones, toward the next deal and the next threat and the endless chess game of staying alive and staying on top. But Dante's mind stayed in that apartment. With the woman who didn't know he existed beyond a mysterious gift. With the child who'd wished on birthday candles, not knowing her wish had been granted by the most dangerous man in the city. Boss. Marcus's voice pulled him back. You okay? Yeah. Dante straightened his tie, slipped back into the armor of who he was supposed to be. Let's go. The Carbones hate waiting. But as the city lights blurred past the window, Dante made a decision. He'd keep watching. Keep protecting. From a distance, always from a distance. Because Rosa and Lily deserved to live in the light. And he deserved to stay in the shadows where he belonged. At least that's what he told himself. At least that's what he tried to believe. Dante's mansion was a monument to everything and nothing. Marble floors that echoed with emptiness. Crystal chandeliers that illuminated rooms no one lived in. 15,000 square feet of space designed to impress, built to intimidate, perfect for a man who'd forgotten what home actually meant. He dismissed Marcus at the door and walked alone through the silent halls to his study. The meeting with the Carbones had gone smoothly. A new shipping route, clean profit, everyone happy. Another Tuesday in the life of Dante Moretti. But his mind wasn't on business. He poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking his grounds. Security lights illuminated the perimeter. Guards walked the property in shifts. Everything controlled. Everything protected. Everything empty. Dante turned from the window and walked to his desk. A massive thing made of mahogany and brass, the kind of desk dictators sign death warrants on. He sat down and pulled open the bottom drawer. The one that didn't contain ledgers or contracts or burner phones. The one that contained his ghosts. The file folder was thin, worn at the edges from being handled too many times over the years. The label was typed official. Rivera Mateo, undercover operative deceased. Dante opened it slowly like he was opening a wound. The first page was a police report. An operation 5 years ago at a warehouse on the south side. An undercover cop's identity compromised. A firefight. Casualties on both sides. 1 officer escaped. Details unclear. Suspicion of internal assistance from within the criminal organization. Dante remembered that night in perfect detail. The kind of detail trauma burns into your brain. He'd been 27 then, already his father's second in command, already responsible for decisions that meant life or death. The warehouse had been a trap. The cops thought they were raiding a weapons cache, but Dante's family had known they were coming. Someone had talked. Someone always talked. Mateo Rivera had been in deep for 8 months. Good cover. Convincing performance. He'd almost fooled everyone. Almost. When the shooting started, Mateo had been cornered in the back office. 4 of Dante's father's men had closed in. Professionals who knew exactly what to do with cops who got too curious. Dante had arrived just in time to watch Mateo back against the wall, gun drawn, knowing he was about to die. Their eyes had met across the warehouse floor. Mateo was young. 24, maybe 25. Terrified but trying not to show it. And in his eyes Dante had seen something he recognized. A man who'd made choices he couldn't take back. Who'd walked into darkness believing he could make a difference. A man not so different from himself. Dante's father had been screaming orders, demanding Mateo's death, demanding to make an example. But Dante had raised his gun and fired. 3 shots into the ceiling creating chaos, shouting that Mateo had backup coming. In the confusion, he'd left the back exit unguarded. Mateo had run. Disappeared into the night. Lived. Dante had taken the beating later. His father's fists. His father's rage. Questions about loyalty. Accusations of weakness. But Dante had kept his mouth shut and taken it, because some things you couldn't explain to men who saw the world in only 2 colors. Us and them. He'd let Mateo live because somewhere in that moment, watching a young cop face his death, Dante had remembered what it felt like to be human. Now he looked at the next page in the file, the accident report from 3 years ago. Route 9, 2:30 in the morning. Mateo Rivera, age 28. Killed instantly when a delivery truck crossed the center line. Driver had fallen asleep at the wheel after a 16-hour shift. No conspiracy. No revenge. No connection to Dante's world. Just the random cruelty of a universe that didn't care who you were, or what you'd survived. Mateo had escaped the warehouse, had gone home to his pregnant wife, had held his newborn daughter, had watched her grow for 3 precious years, and then died anyway, on a random highway, for no reason. The next page was a surveillance photo from 2 years ago. Dante had kept tabs on Rosa after Mateo's death, not interfering, just watching. Making sure the families didn't connect her to her husband's undercover work. Making sure she was safe. The photo showed Rosa leaving the diner where she worked. Exhaustion written in every line of her body. A social services case file was clipped to it. Outstanding medical bills, late rent notices, application for food assistance denied. Dante had wanted to help then. Had almost sent money anonymously. But his father had still been alive, still watching, still suspicious about that night at the warehouse. So Dante had done nothing. Just watched. Just felt guilty. just added Rosa's struggle to the long list of things that kept him awake at night. Until his father had died last year. Heart attack at 63. Quick. Painless. More mercy than the old man had ever shown anyone. After that, Dante had become the boss. Made his own rules. Answered to no one. And still he'd done nothing. Because what was he supposed to do? Show up at her door? Explain that he'd saved her husband once but couldn't save him again? That he'd watched her struggle from a distance like some kind of voyeur? No. He'd stayed away. Told himself it was better that way. Until last Tuesday, when he'd walked into a bakery and seen Lily's face. Now Dante turned to the last item in the file, a photograph he'd acquired through channels he'd rather not think about. A wedding photo. Matteo and Rosa, young and shining with hope. Matteo in a suit that was slightly too big, probably borrowed. Rosa in a simple white dress, holding a bouquet of grocery store flowers. They were radiating the kind of happiness that came from not knowing what life would do to them. Dante touched the photograph lightly, careful not to smudge it. This was the man he'd saved. This was the happiness he'd preserved for 3 more years. These were the people who deserved better than what the world had given them. "I'm sorry, Matteo," Dante said to the empty study. "I should have done more. Should have protected her better. Should have." He stopped. Apologies to dead men were pointless. But actions for the living? Those mattered. Dante closed the file carefully and returned it to the drawer. He finished his whiskey and stood at the window again, looking out at his empty empire. He'd built all this, the mansion, the power, the fear, by taking from people. By being the monster in the dark. By making choices that kept him alive but killed something inside him piece by piece. But maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe he could still do something that mattered. Not for Matteo. Matteo was gone. But for Rosa. For Lily. For the family Matteo had died trying to protect. Dante pulled out his phone and typed a message to his financial guy. Set up an education fund. Anonymous. 50,000 to start. For Lily Rivera. Accessible when she turns 18. The response came back immediately. Done. It wasn't enough. Money never was. But it was something. A start. A small piece of light pushed into the darkness. Dante looked at the wedding photo one last time before putting it away. "I'll take care of them," he promised the ghosts in his study. "I owe you that much." Then he closed the drawer and walked upstairs to bed. Alone in his mansion, surrounded by everything except what mattered. But for the first time in years he slept without nightmares. The whisper started on Monday morning. Rosa was checking her mailbox in the building's cramped lobby when Mrs. Chun from 2B appeared beside her, closer than necessary, her voice pitched low like they were sharing state secrets. "Rosa, honey, I need to talk to you about something." Rosa looked up from the stack of bills in her hands, electric, water, a final notice from the pediatrician. "Good morning, Mrs. Chun. Is everything okay?" The older woman glanced around the empty lobby, then leaned in. "That party on Saturday. Lily's birthday. Someone told me it was quite elaborate. It was wonderful. The cake was. Who paid for it?" The question landed like a slap. Rosa blinked. "I'm sorry. My nephew works at Rosselli's bakery. He said a man came in right after you left. Expensive suit. Cash payment. Lots of it." Mrs. Chin's eyes were sharp with concern. "Rosa, he said the man had that look." "What look?" "The look that says don't ask questions. The look that says this person is connected to things good people shouldn't be connected to." Mrs. Chan touched Rosa's arm gently. "Be careful, sweetheart. In this neighborhood we know what it means when men like that take an interest." Rosa's stomach turned cold. "I don't know what you're talking about. It was just someone being kind." "Kind?" Mrs. Chun shook her head sadly. "Men like that aren't kind, Rosa. They're transactional. And I'm worried about what he might want in return." After Mrs. Chun left, Rosa stood in the lobby holding her mail, her hands shaking slightly. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Outside, morning traffic rumbled past. Everything looked normal, felt normal. But something had shifted. Some shadow had fallen across her life that she couldn't see yet but could feel. At work that afternoon, Maria cornered her during their break in the diner's back storage room. Maria was Rosa's age but looked older, 2 kids, an ex-husband who disappeared, and a lifetime of being exhausted had carved lines into her face. "Girl, we need to talk." Maria pulled 2 folding chairs between the boxes of napkins and sugar packets. "Sit." "Maria, I've got 3 tables. This is more important than tables." Maria's face was grave. "People are talking, Rosa. About Lily's party. About who paid for it." Rosa's chest tightened. "Not you too. Listen to me. My cousin's husband works security at one of the clubs downtown. He says the word on the street is that Dante Moretti bought your daughter's birthday party." The name meant nothing to Rosa. "Who?" Maria's eyes widened. "You really don't know? Dante Moretti. He runs half this city, Rosa. The docks, construction contracts, the unions. She lowered her voice to barely a whisper. "He's Mafia, honey. The real thing. The kind of man parents tell their children to run from." Rosa felt the room tilt slightly. "That's insane. Why would someone like that even know I exist?" "That's what everyone's asking." And Rosa Maria reached for her hand. "Mrs. Sullivan from your building? Her husband saw Moretti's car parked outside your place Saturday night. That black Escalade everyone knows. He was watching the party." "No." Rosa pulled her hand back. "No, this has to be a mistake. Some rumor that got out of control. Maybe it was a different car. Maybe." Rosa Maria's voice was firm but kind. "I've known you for 3 years. You're smart. You're careful. But you're also a single mom working 2 jobs who barely makes rent. If Dante Moretti is interested in you, there's a reason. And whatever that reason is, it can't be good." Rosa stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the concrete floor. "I need to get back to my tables. Rosa. I need to work, Maria. I need to think. I need some space." That evening, after her shift ended and she'd picked up Lily from after-school care, Rosa couldn't shake the conversations from her mind. She made dinner, spaghetti with Jared sauce, the cheap kind, and watched Lily color at the kitchen table, humming to herself, wearing the castle necklace from the party. Her daughter looked so happy, so innocent, so completely unaware that their lives might have been invaded by something dangerous. After Lily was in bed, Rosa sat at her kitchen window and looked down at the street. It was quiet, normal. A few parked cars. Streetlights casting orange pools on the pavement. Nothing sinister. But now she saw threats in every shadow. That car across the street. Was someone sitting in it? That man walking his dog. Was he really a dog owner? Or was he watching her building? Rosa had lived through Mateo's death. Had endured the detectives who'd come to her door afterward. Who'd finally told her the truth about her husband's undercover work. She'd learned that Mateo had lived in 2 worlds. The one he showed her, and the one that eventually killed him. She'd promised herself never again. Never another secret. Never another lie. Never another dangerous man. But now it seemed danger had found her anyway. Rosa picked up her phone and searched. Dante Moretti. The results made her blood run cold. News articles about federal investigations. Rumors of connections to organized crime. Photos of him at charity events, always in expensive suits, always surrounded by men who looked like they could kill you with their bare hands. One headline from last year. Moretti takes control after father's death, new boss, same iron grip. Another article showed him leaving a courthouse, stone-faced and silent. Moretti walks free. Prosecutors unable to make charges stick. Rosa stared at the photos. He looked normal, handsome even. Dark hair going gray at the temples. Strong jawline. Eyes that looked tired but sharp. This was the man who'd bought her daughter's birthday party. This was the man who'd been watching their window. Rosa's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop asking questions. Just accept the gift and move on. For your daughter's sake. Her hands went numb. The phone nearly slipped from her grip. Someone was watching her search, watching her life. She wanted to throw up, wanted to grab Lily and run, wanted to scream. Instead, she sat frozen at her kitchen table, staring at the text message, understanding with perfect clarity that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't control. She typed back with shaking fingers. Who is this? No response. Rosa deleted the search history, turned off her phone, and sat in the dark apartment listening to the sounds of the building. Pipes rattling, neighbors arguing through thin walls, sirens in the distance. Somewhere out there, Dante Moretti existed. Somewhere out there, he decided to involve himself in her life. And Rosa had no idea why or what it would cost her. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was going to find out. Even if it terrified her. Even if it destroyed her. Because nobody, not even a dangerous man with good intentions, was going to control her life without her permission. Tomorrow she'd get answers. Tonight she'd just be afraid. The St. Anthony Youth Center's annual fundraiser was the kind of event Rosa would never normally attend. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, women in evening gowns that cost more than her yearly rent. A world completely separate from hers. But she'd seen the flyer on the community board at the library. And she'd seen one name listed among the sponsors, printed in elegant script. Dante Moretti. Rosa borrowed a simple black dress from Maria. Nothing fancy but clean and presentable. She dropped Lily at Mrs. Chen's with a forced smile and a promise to be back by 9. Then she took 2 buses across town, her heart hammering the entire way. She had to do this. Had to face him. Had to understand why her life had been invaded by a man she'd never met. The woman at the entrance looked at her clipboard when Rosa approached. Name. I don't have an invitation. But I need to speak with Dante Moretti. It's urgent. The woman's professional smile faltered. Ma'am, this is a private event. Without an invitation. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Please. I'm sorry, but I can't. Let her in. Both women turned. Dante stood in the doorway leading to the main hall, a glass of wine in his hand, wearing a dark suit that probably cost more than Rosa's car. His eyes met hers and something flickered across his face. Surprise, recognition, and something else Rosa couldn't quite name. She's with me, he said to the attendant, his voice calm and authoritative. Then to Rosa, please, follow me. He led her through the crowded hall, past tables of wealthy donors writing checks, past a string quartet playing something classical and beautiful. Rosa caught fragments of conversation, stock portfolios, vacation homes in the Hamptons, charity as a tax write-off. Dante guided her to a quieter hallway away from the crowd. The music faded to background noise. They were alone. Mrs. Rivera. He turned to face her. I wasn't expecting to see you here. You know my name. It came out sharper than she'd intended. I know a lot of things. Rosa's hands clenched at her sides. She'd prepared a speech on the bus, firm, clear, demanding answers. But now, standing in front of him, all those careful words evaporated. Why? The question burst out raw and desperate. Why did you pay for my daughter's birthday party? Why are you watching us? Why are people saying your name in connection with my family? Dante set his wine glass on a nearby table. Because your daughter deserved a happy birthday. And you deserved not to feel like you'd failed her. That's not an answer. You don't even know us. No, he agreed. I don't. Rosa's frustration boiled over. Then why? Men like you. She stopped, catching herself, but it was too late. Men like me. Dante's expression didn't change, but something hardened in his eyes. What do you think you know about men like me, Mrs. Rivera? I know you're dangerous. I know people are afraid of you. I know that when your name comes up, people lower their voices and look over their shoulders. Rosa's voice shook, but she pushed forward. And I know that men like you don't do favors out of kindness. Everyone says there's always a price. So what's the price? What do you want from us? Nothing. I don't believe you. Dante was quiet for a moment, studying her. Most people couldn't hold his gaze. Rosa had learned that from her internet search, from the articles that described him as intimidating, cold, dangerous. But she forced herself not to look away. She'd faced worse things than intimidating men. She'd buried a husband. She'd raised a daughter alone. She wouldn't be cowed. Finally Dante spoke, his voice softer. Your husband was a brave man. He did what he thought was right, even when it put him in danger. I respected that. Rosa's breath caught. You knew Matteo. We crossed paths. A long time ago. Dante's expression was carefully neutral, but Rosa saw something underneath, regret maybe. Or guilt. I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Rivera. And I'm sorry if my gesture frightened you. That wasn't my intention. I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you. Rosa's voice cracked despite her best efforts. I just want you to leave us alone. My daughter doesn't need your charity. We don't need your protection or your interest or whatever this is. I understand. Do you? Because right now I'm terrified. I'm terrified that by accepting that cake, I've somehow put my daughter in danger. I'm terrified that your enemies will see her as leverage. I'm terrified that. She stopped, her throat closing around the words. Dante took a step toward her, then seemed to think better of it and stopped. You're right to be afraid. My world is dangerous, and anyone connected to me, even innocently, becomes a target. He paused. That's why I'll stay away. You have my word. Your word. Rosa almost laughed. What's that worth? Everything. His voice was quiet but absolute. I give you my word that I will not contact you or your daughter again. The gift was freely given with no strings attached. You owe me nothing. And I'll make sure my people know you're off limits. Rosa wanted to believe him, wanted to take those words and wrap them around herself in lily-like armor. But she'd been married to an undercover cop. She knew how quickly promises could shatter. If you ever need anything, Dante started. I won't. If you or Lily are ever in trouble, the bakery has my number. They'll get a message to me. I said I won't call. Dante nodded slowly. I hope you're right. Rosa turned to leave, her whole body shaking with adrenaline and fear and anger. She made it 3 steps before his voice stopped her. Mrs. Rivera. She didn't turn around, didn't trust herself to look at him again. Your husband would be proud of you. The life you've built, the daughter you're raising. He'd be proud. Something broke inside Rosa's chest. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. She walked away without responding, her heels clicking on the polished floor like gunshots. Through the crowded hall, past the beautiful people and their beautiful lives, out into the night air that felt like breathing after being underwater. On the bus ride home, Rosa stared out the window at the city lights blurring past. She'd confronted him, had told him to stay away, had drawn a line in the sand. So why did she feel like she just made everything worse? Why did his final words echo in her head like a goodbye? And why, despite everything, had she seen genuine regret in his eyes when he'd mentioned Matteo? Rosa didn't have answers. Just more questions. Just more fear. And the terrible, unsettling feeling that Dante Moretti had told her the truth about one thing. His world was dangerous. And somehow, whether she wanted it or not, she just stepped into it. Vincent Calabrese believed in 2 things: power and leverage. Everything else was just noise. He sat in his office above the meat packing plant on the south side, smoking a Cuban cigar and reviewing reports from his street captains. The office smelled like blood and money, an accurate representation of how Vincent had built his empire over 30 years. You're gonna want to see this, Boss Tommy, one of his lieutenants, dropped a manila folder onto the desk. He was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. Vincent didn't pick up the folder immediately. He never rushed. Rushing showed weakness, and Vincent Calabrese had no weaknesses. Tell me. It's about Moretti. Dante's getting soft. Now Vincent was interested. He set down his cigar and opened the folder. Inside were surveillance photos. A woman leaving a diner in a waitress uniform. A little girl walking to school with a backpack almost as big as she was. An apartment building that had seen better days. A bakery on Porter Street. Who is she? Nobody really. Rosa Rivera. Single mom, works at Sam's Diner on Hollis Street. Kids 8 years old. Second grade at PS 47-inch. Tommy leaned forward. His excitement barely contained. But here's the interesting part. Moretti paid for the kids' birthday party. Dropped $1,000 in cash at that bakery. Then had his guys watching their apartment during the party. Vincent studied the photos more carefully. The woman was pretty in a tired sort of way. The kind of pretty that came from surviving, not from spa treatments and personal trainers. The kid had dark braids and a gap-toothed smile in one of the photos. Why would Moretti care about some random waitress and her kid? That's what we thought too. So we dug deeper. Tommy pulled out another document. Her husband was Mateo Rivera. You remember him? Vincent's eyes narrowed. The undercover cop? The one who infiltrated the Moretti operation 5 years back. The same. He died 3 years ago in a car accident, but get this. Tommy tapped the report. Word on the street is that Dante let him escape that night at the warehouse. Took heat from his old man for it. Some kind of moral crisis or something. Vincent leaned back in his chair, processing. Dante Moretti was the most dangerous man in the city precisely because he was careful. Never showed emotion. Never made mistakes. Never gave his enemies an opening. But this was different. Moretti's been untouchable for years, Vincent said slowly. Never slips up. Never shows weakness. But now he's playing guardian angel to some dead cop's family. Looks like it. And boss, he met with her Tuesday night at the St. Anthony fundraiser. Our guy inside saw them talking. She looked pissed. He looked guilty, maybe? It was weird. Vincent picked up his cigar and took a long drag, thinking. He'd been looking for a way to crack Dante's armor for 3 years, ever since Dante had taken over after his father's death and had started encroaching on Vincent's territory. The docks, the construction contracts, the union deals. Dante was younger, smarter, and worst of all had honor. That antiquated sense of right and wrong that made him unpredictable. But honor was a weakness. Honor meant you cared about things, and things you cared about could be taken away. This is exactly what we need, Vincent said, tapping the photo of Rosa. Moretti's finally shown us where he's vulnerable. What do you want us to do? Vincent studied the photos again. The woman, the child, the apartment with the broken security door, and the fire escape that looked like it would collapse in a strong wind. Watch them. I want surveillance on the apartment 24/7. Follow the kid to and from school. Let Moretti's guys see you doing it. I want him to know we're paying attention. You want us to make a move. Not yet. First we make him sweat. Make him wonder when we'll strike. Make him pull resources to protect them. Vincent smiled coldly. Fear is its own kind of torture. Let Dante lie awake at night imagining all the ways we could hurt them. And then we take what he cares about. We grab the kid, make it clear that Dante Moretti bleeds just like everyone else. We show this city that his protection means nothing. Vincent ground out his cigar in the crystal ashtray on his desk. We break him, Tommy. Not with bullets. With guilt. Tommy grinned. When do we start? Today. Get Eddie and Marco on surveillance. I want to know everywhere that woman goes, everyone she talks to, every routine she has. Find the weak points in her security, and trust me, a broke single mom living in that neighborhood has plenty of weak points. What about Moretti's protection detail? He can't protect them 24/7 without tipping them off to what he is. And from what our source says, the woman told him to stay away from her. Vincent's smile widened. Which means Dante's got his hands tied. He wants to protect them, but he promised not to interfere. That's the problem with honor, Tommy. It makes you stupid. After Tommy left, Vincent stood at his window overlooking the meat-packing district. Below, trucks came and went, carrying legitimate cargo that had illegitimate profits. His empire. His kingdom. But it wasn't enough. Not while Dante Moretti was still out there, still encroaching, still acting like he was better than everyone else because he had some kind of moral code. Vincent had been in this business for 30 years. He'd seen men like Dante before. Idealists who thought they could be criminals with consciences. They all fell eventually. Pride or honor or love, something always brought them down. For Dante it would be guilt. Guilt over that dead cop. Guilt over the widow struggling to survive. Guilt over a little girl who just wanted a birthday cake. Vincent would use that guilt like a knife. Slow and precise. He'd make Dante watch as everything he cared about was threatened. Then he'd make Dante choose. His empire or their safety. And when Dante inevitably chose their safety, because men with honor always made the same stupid choice, Vincent would take both. The empire and the family. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "It's me. I need you to find out everything about PS-47's security protocols. Specifically, how easy it would be to grab a second grader on her way home from school." The voice on the other end asked a question. "Because we're going hunting," Vincent said. "And Dante Moretti just gave us the perfect bait." He hung up and lit another cigar, watching the smoke curl toward the ceiling. In 3 days, maybe 4, they'd make their move. Just long enough for Dante to realize his surveillance had been noticed. Just long enough for the fear to really sink in. Then they'd strike. And Vincent would finally prove what he'd always known. In this world, honor didn't make you strong. It made you dead. Or worse, it made you watch while everyone you cared about suffered. Either way, Vincent Calabrese would win. He always did. The envelope appeared on a Wednesday morning, slipped under Rosa's apartment door while she was getting Lily ready for school. Rosa almost stepped on it. Plain manila. No address. No postage. Just her name written in careful block letters. Rosa Rivera. "Mama, I can't find my library book," Lily called from her bedroom. "Check under your bed." Baby Rosa picked up the envelope, turning it over in her hands. Her stomach tightened with anxiety. After everything that had happened, the rumors, the confrontation with Dante, the strange feeling that she was being watched, an anonymous envelope felt like a threat. She waited until Lily was safely on the school bus before opening it. Inside was a file folder. Official documents with police department letterhead. Incident reports. Witness statements. And a handwritten note on heavy, expensive stationery. "Your husband was a hero. He saved lives by doing what was right, even at great personal risk. I owed him a debt I could never repay. You deserve to know the whole truth about the night that changed everything." The gift was never about obligation. It was about honor. DM. Rosa's hands trembled as she spread the documents across her kitchen table. The coffee she'd poured grew cold as she read. Incident report, confidential date. September 14, 2020 location. Warehouse, 1847, Industrial Boulevard operation. Undercover infiltration of Moretti crime family officer. Mateo Rivera, U-2847. Rosa's breath caught. She'd known Mateo was undercover. The detectives had told her that much after he died. But they'd never given her details. Said it was for her protection. Said the less she knew, the safer she'd be. She kept reading. Subject's cover was compromised at approximately 22:47 hours. Subject was cornered by 4 armed suspects in the warehouse office. Situation critical. Subject believed his life was in immediate danger. At 22:51, unexpected gunfire created confusion among suspects. Unknown individual fired 3 shots into warehouse ceiling, causing disarray. Subject utilized this distraction to escape through previously unguarded exit. Subject successfully evacuated and was extracted by backup team at predetermined location. Subject sustained no injuries. Investigation into source of gunfire inconclusive. Strong suspicion of internal assistance from within the Moretti organization. Identity of person who aided subject's escape remains unknown. Rosa read the paragraph 3 times, her mind racing. Someone had saved Matteo that night. Someone inside Dante's organization had deliberately created chaos to let her husband escape. She pulled out the next document. A witness statement from another undercover officer who'd been in the building. I saw Dante Moretti fire his weapon into the ceiling. 3 shots. It was deliberate. He was creating a diversion. When the old man, Dante's father, demanded to know why he'd wasted ammunition, Dante claimed he saw backup arriving. But I was watching the whole time. There was no backup visible yet. He lied to give the UC time to run. Rosa's vision blurred with tears. Dante Moretti had saved Matteo's life. The next document was even more damning. An internal report from the Moretti organization. How Dante had obtained this, Rosa couldn't imagine. Dante took severe disciplinary action for the escape of the undercover operative. His father questioned his loyalty and judgment. Dante maintained that he believed backup was imminent, and that firing warning shots was a tactical decision. Investigation suggested otherwise. Punishment administered. Matter considered closed. Punishment administered. Rosa knew what that meant in Dante's world. She pressed her hand to her mouth, feeling sick. He'd been beaten. Maybe worse. For saving Matteo. The final document was a photocopy of a hospital report from 3 years ago. The night Matteo died. Route 9. The accident. Medical examiner's report showing Matteo had died instantly. Clipped to it was a handwritten note in different handwriting. Feminine, careful. Mr. Moretti paid for all funeral expenses anonymously. He also established a fund to cover outstanding medical bills from the birth of your daughter. He never wanted you to know. He said your family had suffered enough. Angela, Mr. Moretti's assistant. Rosa sat back in her chair, the documents scattered in front of her, and tried to process everything. Dante had saved Matteo's life 5 years ago, had taken a beating for it, had risked his position in his own organization to let a cop, a man sent to destroy his family, escape and live. And then when Matteo died anyway, randomly and senselessly, Dante had quietly paid for the funeral, had covered the medical bills that had been drowning Rosa, had watched from a distance as she struggled, never revealing what he'd done. The birthday cake wasn't charity. It wasn't about control or leverage, or any of the sinister motives everyone had suggested. It was guilt, and grief, and a kind of honor Rosa hadn't believed men like Dante Moretti possessed. She thought about their confrontation at the fundraiser, how he'd looked when he mentioned Matteo, that flash of regret in his eyes, the way he'd said your husband was a brave man like he meant it with his whole heart. Because he did mean it. Because Dante had given Matteo 3 more years of life. 3 years Matteo had spent loving Rosa, meeting his daughter, building memories that Rosa now clutched like precious stones. Without Dante, Matteo would have died in that warehouse. Lily would never have met her father. Rosa would never have had those last 3 years. She pressed her hands to her face and sobbed, great wrenching cries that came from somewhere deep and broken inside her. She cried for Matteo, for the husband who'd been braver than she'd ever fully understood. She cried for Dante, for the man who'd done the right thing at terrible cost to himself. She cried for the complexity of a world where monsters could be merciful and mercy could come from the darkest places. When Lily came home from school that afternoon, Rosa held her daughter extra tight. "Mama, you're squishing me," Lily laughed. "I know, baby. I'm sorry. I just love you so much." "I love you too, Mama. Why are your eyes red?" "Just happy tears, sweetheart. Sometimes people cry when they're grateful for something." That night, after Lily was asleep, Rosa pulled out her phone. Her hand shook as she typed a message to the number Dante had said would reach him. She deleted 3 drafts before settling on something simple. "Thank you. For everything. For Matteo. For the 3 years you gave us. For the birthday party. For watching over us. I understand now. And I'm sorry I didn't before. She hit send before she could change her mind. 3 minutes later, her phone buzzed. You owe me no thanks and certainly no apology. Your husband earned every year, every moment. I only did what any decent person would do. Stay safe, Mrs. Rivera. Please. Rosa stared at those last 2 words. Stay safe. Not a command. A plea. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the urgency of those words, in the documents he'd sent, in the timing of everything. He was warning her. But warning her about what? Rosa walked to her window and looked down at the street. A car she didn't recognize was parked across the way. Had it been there this morning? She couldn't remember. Another car down the block. Engine running even though it was parked. Rosa's blood ran cold. Someone was watching. Not Dante's people. Someone else. And suddenly Rosa understood. By confronting Dante publicly, by establishing a visible connection between them, she'd painted a target on herself and Lily. His enemies now knew she mattered to him. And in Dante's world, that made her a weapon to be used against him. Rosa grabbed her phone and typed frantically. Someone's watching my apartment. 2 cars. What do I do? The response came immediately. Lock your doors. Keep Lily inside. I'm sending people. 10 minutes. Then another message. I'm sorry. This is my fault. I should have stayed away. Rosa looked at her sleeping daughter and felt fear turn her stomach to ice. What had she done? What had they both done? And how were they going to survive what was coming? It happened on Thursday afternoon under a sky-threatening rain. Lily walked home from school the same way she always did. Down Parsons Street, past Mr. Kim's corner store where he always waved, then left on Morrison Avenue toward home. Rosa usually walked with her, but she'd had to cover an emergency shift at the diner, and Mrs. Chun was supposed to meet Lily at the building entrance at 3:30. Lily was humming the song they'd learned in music class, her backpack bouncing with each step. She was thinking about the spelling test tomorrow, and whether Mama would let her have ice cream if she got all the words right. She didn't notice the van until it was right beside her. The side door slid open fast. Too fast for an 8-year-old to process. Hands reached out, rough, strong, grabbing her arm. Lily opened her mouth to scream, but a hand clamped over it, smelling like cigarettes and something chemical that made her eyes water. She was being pulled off the sidewalk, her feet leaving the ground, her backpack falling to the concrete with a thud. Quiet, kid. A man's voice growled in her ear. Just stay quiet and nobody gets hurt. Terror froze everything inside her. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but feel her heart hammering so hard it hurt. The man was pulling her into the van. The door was closing. Everything was happening so fast. Then tires screeched. A black car slammed to a stop behind the van, so close it nearly hit the bumper. 3 men erupted from it, moving with deadly precision. One of them had a gun already drawn. Let her go. Now the voice was calm but absolute, the voice of someone who'd killed before and wouldn't hesitate to do it again. The man holding Lily cursed. She felt his grip tighten painfully on her arm. Another man in the van was reaching for something. A weapon Lily's terrified brain supplied. Everything exploded into chaos. Gunfire cracked through the afternoon air. Pedestrians screamed and scattered. Lily heard glass shattering, heard men shouting. The hands holding her suddenly released and she fell onto the van floor. Hard, her knee cracking against metal. Then someone was lifting her. Different hands, gentler, and a voice was saying, I got you, kid. I got you. You're okay. She was carried out of the van and behind a parked car. The man holding her was young, maybe 25, with kind eyes and a tattoo on his neck. He positioned his body between her and the fight, shielding her. You're okay. He kept repeating like a prayer. You're okay. We've got you. You're safe now. Lily was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She wanted to cry but couldn't. Shock had frozen everything inside her. Terror locked behind ice. More gunfire. shouting, the sound of someone's body hitting the pavement. Then sudden quiet. "Tony, status?" someone called. "Got the girl. She's safe. Minor scrapes, no serious injuries. 2 suspects down, 1 fleeing on foot. Let him go, kid's the priority." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The young man, Tony, looked down at Lily. "Hey, what's your name?" Lily, her voice came out tiny, broken. "Lily, that's a pretty name. I'm Tony. And those bad guys? They're not gonna hurt you. Ever. You understand? We're gonna take you to your mom now, okay?" Lily nodded, unable to speak anymore. Tony made a phone call, his voice low and urgent. Then he scooped Lily up and carried her to the black car. She caught a glimpse of the van, shattered windows, 2 men on the ground, not moving, blood on the concrete. She closed her eyes and buried her face in Tony's shoulder. At the police station, everything was too bright, too loud, too much. A nice officer gave Lily hot chocolate she couldn't drink and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders that couldn't stop the shaking. Then Mama burst through the door. "Lily! Oh God, baby Lily!" Rosa flew across the room and grabbed her daughter, holding her so tight Lily could barely breathe. But it was good. Being held tight was good. It meant she was real. This was real. Mama was here. "Baby, are you okay? Are you hurt? Did they?" "I'm okay, Mama." Lily's voice finally worked. "Some men helped me. They stopped the bad people." Rosa pulled back to look at her, hands frantically checking for injuries, eyes wild with fear. "What men? Who?" A detective approached, a tired woman with gray in her hair. "Mrs. Rivera, your daughter was targeted for abduction. We believe it was the Calabrese organization attempting to use her as leverage against Dante Moretti." Rosa's face went white. No, this can't." Some witnesses intervened. They wouldn't give their names, but we're confident they were Mr. Moretti's people. "They saved your daughter's life." The detective's expression was grim. "Mrs. Rivera, you and your daughter are in serious danger. The Calabreses won't stop. As long as they think you're connected to Moretti, you're a target." Rosa couldn't breathe. This was her worst nightmare. The thing she'd feared since the moment she'd learned Dante's name. Her baby, her sweet, innocent baby, had almost been taken because of a connection Rosa hadn't asked for and didn't want. "What do I do?" Rosa whispered. "How do I protect her?" "We can offer police protection, but it won't be enough." The voice came from the doorway. Rosa turned. Marcus stood there, Dante's second in command, the man who'd been driving the car that night outside her apartment. His face was grave. "The Calabreses have resources, manpower, patience. They'll wait for the police to leave and try again. And again. Until they succeed." Marcus walked closer, his voice low. "Mrs. Rivera, I know you told Mr. Moretti to stay away. But right now he's the only one who can keep you and your daughter alive." "Where is he?" Rosa heard herself ask. "Handling this. Making sure Vincent Calabrese understands there will be consequences." Marcus pulled out his phone. "But first we need to get you and Lily somewhere safe. Both of you. Tonight." Rosa looked at her daughter, at Lily's tear-streaked face, at the terror still swimming in her eyes, at the innocence that had been shattered on a sunny afternoon 3 blocks from home. This was Dante's world. The world she'd told him to keep away from her family. But his world had found them anyway. And now, whether she liked it or not, Dante Moretti was the only thing standing between her daughter and monsters who would use an 8-year-old as a weapon. Rosa held Lily closer and made a decision. "Take us to him," she said quietly. "Take us to Dante." Marcus nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Let's go." As they left the police station, Lily clutched in Rosa's arms, Marcus leading them to an armored car, guards surrounding them on all sides. Rosa looked up at the darkening sky and understood with perfect clarity that her life had just changed forever. She'd stepped fully into Dante's world now. And there was no going back. Only forward, into whatever darkness waited. But at least Lily was alive. At least they were together. For now, that had to be enough. Dante's office overlooked the city like a command center. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Monitors showing security feeds from a dozen locations. A desk that had seen more blood money than most banks. But tonight, none of it mattered. He stood at the window, staring at his reflection in the glass. Behind him, Marcus waited in silence. The weight between them was suffocating. "The Calabreses will try again," Marcus said finally. "Vincent won't stop. Not now. He knows she matters to you, and that makes her the perfect weapon. I know. We could hit them first. Take out Vincent. Send a message so loud every family in the city hears it. And start a war." Dante turned from the window. "A war that puts Rosa and Lily directly in the crossfire. Vincent has lieutenants who'd love an excuse to escalate. You take out the king, and 10 pawns rise up looking for revenge. Then what?" Marcus's frustration broke through his usual control. "We can't protect them forever. We can't put guards on a second grader 24/7 without making it obvious what she means to you. We can't." "I know what we can't do." Marcus Dante's voice was quiet but absolute. "That's why I've already made my decision." Marcus went very still. "Boss." Dante walked to his desk and opened the bottom drawer. He pulled out a burner phone and set it on the desk between them. "I'm turning myself in." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "You can't be serious. The feds have been building a RICO case against me for years. They're close, but they don't have enough. Witnesses too scared to talk. Evidence that mysteriously disappears." Dante picked up the phone. "I give them everything. Names, locations, money trails, operations. I testify against Vincent, the Russos, the Carbones, every family operating in this city. You'll go to prison for life." "I know. For a woman you've spoken to twice? For a kid who doesn't even know your name." Marcus's voice cracked. "Boss, this is insane." Dante looked at his second in command. The man who'd been with him through 15 years of blood and loyalty and choices that had damned them both. "It's the only way to keep them safe. Permanently. There has to be another option." "There isn't." Dante's voice was gentle but firm. "Vincent will keep coming. And even if we eliminate Vincent, someone else will see the weakness. Will notice that Dante Moretti cares about something. And they'll use it. Again and again. The only way to protect Rosa and Lily is to remove me from the equation entirely. By destroying yourself. By doing the one thing I should have done 20 years ago." Dante sat down heavily. "I've spent my whole life taking from people, Marcus. Taking their money. Their freedom. Their lives sometimes. Building an empire on fear and blood and telling myself it was just business. Just survival. It was survival. You did what you had to do. Did I?" Dante looked up at him. "Or did I just take the easy path? The path my father laid out for me? Maybe I could have been something else. Something better." Marcus said nothing. What could he say? "I let Mateo Rivera live because for one moment, I saw what I could have been. What I should have been. A man who did the right thing even when it cost him." Dante's voice was barely audible. "He died anyway. And his family suffered because I wasn't brave enough to follow through. To really change. You helped them. The birthday party, the money. Wasn't enough. It's never enough." Dante picked up the burner phone. "But this? This I can do. I can take down every organization that would threaten them. I can make sure Vincent Calabrese spends the rest of his life in a cell. And I can make sure Rosa and Lily disappear so completely that no one will ever find them. The Witness Protection Program. New identities. New location. Financial support to start over. A life where no one knows who they were or why they matter." Dante set the phone down. "That's my price for cooperation. Non-negotiable." Marcus sat down across from him. For a long moment neither spoke. "How long have you been planning this?" Marcus asked quietly. "Since the moment I saw Lily's face in that bakery. I just didn't want to admit it to myself." Dante smiled sadly. But after the attack today, there's no more pretending. This is the only way. The organization will fall apart without you. I know. Families will scramble for territory. There'll be violence, chaos. And the feds will be waiting with the information I give them. They'll sweep up everyone trying to fill the vacuum. By the time the dust settles, organized crime in this city will be crippled for a generation. Dante stood. That's not a bad legacy, Marcus. Better than the one I was building. Marcus stood too, his face conflicted. What do you want me to do? Get out. Tonight. Take whatever money you've saved and disappear. Change your name. Start over somewhere far from here. Dante walked around the desk. You've been loyal, Marcus. For 15 years you've had my back. Now I'm giving you a chance at something better. What about you? I'll call my lawyer. Set up the meeting with the federal prosecutor. Make the deal. Dante pulled out his regular phone and typed a message. But first I need to see them. Rosa and Lily. One last time. To explain. To apologize. They're at the safe house on Morrison Street. Tony's team has perimeter security. Good. Dante pocketed his phone. Tell them I'm coming. And Marcus. Yeah, boss. Thank you. For everything. For keeping me human when this life tried to make me a monster. Marcus's eyes were wet. You were never a monster, Dante. You just convinced yourself you were. After Marcus left, Dante stood alone in his office for the last time. He looked around at the empire he'd built, the monitors, the files, the symbols of power that had defined him for so long. None of it mattered. None of it had ever mattered. What mattered was a little girl with mismatched ribbons who deserved to grow up safe. What mattered was a woman who'd lost too much already and deserved peace. What mattered was finally doing something that might balance the scales. Dante pulled out the burner phone and dialed. Federal Bureau of Investigation. How may I direct your call? I need to speak with whoever's handling the RICO investigation into Dante Moretti. He took a breath. Tell them Dante Moretti wants to make a deal. Full cooperation. Complete testimony. But I have conditions. A pause. Please hold. As he waited, Dante looked out at the city one last time. His city. His kingdom. His prison. He was about to tear it all down. And for the first time in his life he felt free. Mr. Moretti? A new voice came on the line. This is Special Agent Sarah Chun. I'm very interested in what you have to say. Dante smiled faintly. I hope you have a lot of notepads, Agent Chun. This is going to take a while. Then he began to talk. And with every word, he dismantled the empire his father had built. With every name he signed away his freedom. With every detail he bought Rosa and Lily the life they deserved. The life Matteo had wanted for them. The life Dante would never have. But that was okay. That was the price of redemption. And Dante Moretti paid it gladly. The raids began at dawn. 15 locations hit simultaneously across the city. FBI tactical teams in black body armor. Search warrants. Arrest warrants. Federal prosecutors with evidence boxes that had been building for years. Now finally complete thanks to one man's testimony. The Moretti organization crumbled like a house built on sand. At the docks, agents arrested 4 captains overseeing smuggling operations. At the construction sites, they hauled away union bosses who'd been taking bribes for decades. In the back rooms of restaurants and social clubs, they pulled out lieutenants, soldiers, accountants, everyone who'd built their lives on Dante's empire. The news channels ran non-stop coverage. Massive FBI operation dismantles organized crime network. Helicopters circled buildings. Reporters shouted questions at men being led away in handcuffs. And through it all, Dante sat in a federal holding facility, calm and composed, answering every question the prosecutors asked. Who authorized the Riverside Port contract? Vincent Calabrese and my father jointly. I have the documents in my office safe. Third drawer. Combination 7421. The union intimidation in 2019. Anthony Russo. He used 3 men, Eddie Carbone, Tommy Moz, and a freelancer named James Walsh. Walsh lives in Queens. Here's his address. Money laundering through the restaurant chain. That was Paolo Moretti, my cousin. He runs the books. You'll find everything on his laptop. Password is his daughter's birthday, May 15, 2008. The prosecutors could barely keep up. Every question Dante answered led to 3 more arrests. Every name he gave unraveled another thread. Every detail he provided was meticulously accurate because Dante had spent 20 years building this empire from the inside. He knew every secret, every weakness, every crime. And now he was burning it all down. In his office above the meat packing plant, Vincent Calabrese watched the news in disbelief. His phone rang constantly. Captains calling to say they'd been arrested. Lawyers demanding payment. Politicians asking if they should be worried. How is this happening? Vincent shouted at the television. How does the FBI suddenly have everything? His lieutenant Tommy looked sick. Boss, the rumors, they're saying Moretti flipped. That he's giving them everyone. That's impossible. Dante Moretti doesn't flip. He'd rather die than. The door burst open. FBI agents, guns drawn, voices shouting commands. Vincent Calabrese, you're under arrest for racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering. Vincent's world tilted. As they put him in handcuffs, he finally understood. Dante hadn't just protected the woman and her kid. He destroyed the entire criminal infrastructure of the city to do it. It was insane. Suicidal. The act of a man who'd completely lost his mind. Or the act of a man who'd finally found his soul. By midday, the jails were overflowing. By afternoon, lawyers were scrambling. By evening, the realization had set in. This wasn't a raid. This was an extinction event. In a federal prosecutor's office, Special Agent Sarah Chun reviewed the testimony transcripts with her supervisor. I've been doing this for 20 years, her supervisor said, flipping through pages. I've never seen anything like this. He's giving us everyone. Not just his organization. Every family, every operation. Every dirty cop and politician in the city. He's dismantling the entire ecosystem, Sarah agreed. Without Moretti holding territory, everyone else is scrambling. And we're waiting at every turn with warrants based on his information. What's his endgame? Protection for 2 civilians. A widow and her daughter. New identities, relocation, financial support. Sarah looked at the file. Rosa and Lily Rivera. The daughter's 8 years old. He's throwing away his life for people he barely knows. No, Sarah had interviewed Dante herself, had looked into his eyes as he testified. He's saving the family of a man who deserved better. He's buying redemption with the only currency he has left. His freedom. His freedom, Sarah confirmed. And he's doing it without hesitation. I've seen career criminals try to negotiate their way out of jaywalking tickets. This man is confessing to crimes we didn't even know about. He wants the maximum sentence. He's demanding we throw the book at him. Why? Sarah looked at the photo of Rosa and Lily in the file. Because some debts can't be paid with money, only with sacrifice. Back in his cell, Dante was visited by his lawyer, an expensive suit named Richard who'd been on retainer for 15 years. You need to stop talking, Richard said, his voice desperate. You're confessing to crimes that carry life sentences. Multiple life sentences. I know. Dante, listen to me. I can still negotiate. We can reduce charges, arrange. No. You're throwing your life away. I'm saving lives, Dante corrected calmly. 2 lives that matter more than mine ever did. Richard sat back, defeated. The prosecutor is offering life with possibility of parole after 20 years, contingent on continued cooperation. The witness protection arrangement. Ironclad. The Riveras will receive new identities, relocation to their choice of location, and a trust fund for financial support. They'll disappear completely. Then we have a deal. Dante. Richard, I've made my choice. Just make sure the paperwork is airtight. Make sure Rosa and Lily are protected. That's all that matters now. After the lawyer left, Dante lay on the thin mattress in his cell and stared at the ceiling. The walls were concrete. The air smelled like disinfectant and despair. This would be his world for the next 20 years, maybe longer, maybe forever. But he felt lighter than he had in decades. Outside these walls, the city was chaos. Organizations scrambling. Territories contested. Violence erupting as the power vacuum created instability. But the FBI was ready. With every conflict, they made more arrests. With every power grab, they dismantled another operation. The criminal ecosystem that had thrived for generations was dying, starved of its infrastructure. And in a safe house across town, Rosa and Lily were packing their lives into suitcases, preparing to disappear into new identities, new futures. They were safe. That's what mattered. Dante had spent his life taking from people their money, their dignity, their choices. He'd built an empire on fear and blood and justified it as survival. But in the end, he'd given something back. Not to the people he'd hurt. He could never balance those scales. But to two people who represented everything good he'd destroyed. Two people who deserved the peace his world had stolen from them. It wasn't forgiveness. Dante knew he didn't deserve forgiveness. But it was something. One good thing in a lifetime of bad choices. One sacrifice that meant something. As sleep finally came, Dante dreamed of a little girl with mismatched ribbons, blowing out birthday candles and making a wish. And for the first time in 20 years, his dreams were peaceful. Because somewhere in the world, that little girl would grow up safe. And that was worth everything. 6 months later, in a small coastal town called Harmony Bay, Rosa sat on the porch of a modest house and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. The house was small but perfect. 2 bedrooms. A yard where Lily could play. White picket fence that needed painting but felt like home anyway. A 5-minute walk to the ocean, where seagulls called and waves whispered secrets to the shore. They had new names now. The federal marshals had given them documents, social security cards, a complete history. Rosa was now Sarah Mitchell. Lily was Emma. Their old lives existed only in memory and sealed files. At first it had been terrifying. Learning to answer to a new name. Remembering a fake childhood. Building a life from manufactured pieces. But slowly it had become real. Lily had adjusted faster than Rosa expected. Children were resilient that way. She'd made friends at her new school. Joined the soccer team. Started talking about learning to surf. The nightmares from the attempted kidnapping came less frequently now. Replaced by dreams of ordinary things. Homework and birthday parties and crushes on boys who didn't know how to talk to girls. Rosa had found work at a bookstore on Main Street. Nothing glamorous, but honest work that let her see Lily off to school each morning and be home when she returned each afternoon. The owner, an elderly woman named Margaret, was kind. The customers were friendly. The pace was gentle. Safe. For the first time in years, maybe in her entire life, Rosa felt safe. "Mama!" Lily called from the yard, where she was doing cartwheels in the grass. "Can we go to the boardwalk? Please." Rosa smiled. "Sure, baby. Go wash your hands and grab your jacket." The boardwalk was busy with evening tourists and locals enjoying the cool ocean breeze. Rosa and Lily walked hand in hand, stopping to watch street performers juggling fire and musicians playing guitars with open cases for tips. They bought ice cream, mint chocolate chip for Lily, vanilla for Rosa, and sat on a bench watching boats bob in the harbor. The air tasted like salt and freedom. "Mama," Lily said, licking her cone thoughtfully, "do you ever miss our old house?" Rosa considered the question carefully. "Sometimes. But I like it here better. Don't you?" "Yeah," Lily swung her legs, too short to reach the ground. "I miss Mrs. Chun though. And Maria. And my old teacher." "I know, sweetheart. I miss them too." "Do you think they remember us?" Rosa's throat tightened. "I think they remember us with love." And I think they're happy we're safe and happy. They finished their ice cream in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink lower toward the horizon. Then Lily tugged Rose's hand. Can we walk to the end of the pier? Of course. The pier stretched out over the water, weathered wood creaking beneath their feet. At the very end, a man sat alone on a bench with a fishing rod, his line disappearing into the darkening water. Rosa stopped so suddenly that Lily stumbled. Even from behind, even after 6 months, she knew him. The set of his shoulders, the gray at his temples, the stillness that came from a man who'd made peace with himself. Dante. Her heart hammered. The federal prosecutor had told her he'd received life in prison with possibility of parole after 20 years. So why, how? As if sensing her presence, he turned. Their eyes met across the pier. Recognition, surprise, and something Rosa couldn't quite name, hope maybe, or permission. Stay here for just a minute, baby, Rosa said to Lily. I need to talk to someone. She walked toward him slowly, each step feeling like crossing an ocean. He stood as she approached, his hands in his pockets, looking uncertain for the first time since she'd met him. I thought you were in prison, Rosa said quietly. Early release. 3 years served, conditional parole for cooperation and testimony that led to the conviction of 47 defendants. His voice was different, softer, lighter. They assigned me here. Said a small town would be easier to monitor. I didn't know you were, he trailed off. I only found out 2 weeks ago when I saw Lily Emma at the grocery store. You didn't approach us. I promised to stay away. To let you build a new life without my shadow falling over it. Dante looked out at the water. I just wanted to see that you were okay. That you were happy. Then I was going to leave. Rosa studied him. He looked different too. Thinner. The expensive suits replaced by jeans and a simple jacket. The hardness in his eyes replaced by something gentler. He looked like a man who'd shed a heavy burden and was learning to stand upright again. The prosecutor told me what you did, Rosa said. The deal you made. The testimony. You destroyed everything to save us. I destroyed what deserved to be destroyed. You gave up your life. No, Dante finally looked at her. I gave up a life that wasn't worth living. And I got something better. Peace. Purpose. The knowledge that Mateo's family. His voice caught. That you and Lily are safe. That's not a sacrifice, Rosa. That's redemption. Tears pricked Rosa's eyes. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. He stopped, searching for words. I wanted you to know that I'm okay. That I meant what I said. You owe me nothing. No debt. No obligation. Just live well. Be happy. That's all I ever wanted. Mama. Lily's voice called from behind them. Who are you talking to? Rosa looked back at her daughter. At this beautiful, brave, resilient child who'd survived trauma and come through it stronger. Then she looked at Dante. At the man who'd sacrificed everything to give them this chance. She made a decision. Dante, she said softly, would you like to get ice cream with us? His eyes widened. I shouldn't. The parole conditions are about not associating with criminals. Last time I checked, getting ice cream with a friend wasn't a crime. A friend. Maybe. Someday. Rosa held out her hand. But you have to start somewhere. Dante stared at her outstretched hand for a long moment. Then slowly he took it and let her pull him to his feet. They walked back down the pier together, Rosa, Dante, and Lily, who chattered excitedly about mint chocolate chip and whether waffle cones were better than cups. To anyone watching, they looked like any other family enjoying a summer evening by the ocean. And maybe, just maybe, they could be. Not today. Not even tomorrow. But someday. Because everyone deserved a second chance. Even monsters who'd learned to be human. Especially monsters who'd learned that some things, like protecting an 8-year-old's smile, were worth more than empires. As they walked into the ice cream shop, Lily slipped her hand into Dante's. What's your favorite flavor? Dante looked down at her, this child he'd saved twice, and smiled. A real smile that reached his eyes. I don't know. I've never really thought about it. Then we'll help you find out, Lily declared. Everyone should have a favorite ice cream. And as the sun set over Harmony Bay, 3 people who'd found each other through tragedy began the slow, careful work of building something new. Not a family yet, but the possibility of one. Not forgiveness, but the beginning of healing. Not perfect, but real. And sometimes that was enough.